Hello, I'm Callum Bentley, editor of The Manufacturer, and joining me here today from HP to talk about how UK manufacturers are digitising their solutions and the resulting benefits are Ian Ames White, UK and Ireland Advanced Document Solutions Country Manager, and Marie-Amelie Masnou, Worldwide Manufacturing Lead. Thank you both for joining us.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Marie-Amelie, I'd like to start with you if I may. Manufacturing is already going through a stage of rapid digital transformation, and you believe you have a crucial role to play in this move, particularly in the process of digitising paper processes. How exactly is HP aiming to do this?
Well, it's true that manufacturers rely heavily on paper today, and at HP we are at the core of the paper, of course. We come from the printing industry. And when our manufacturers, customers ask us to come in, we're looking at optimizing and rationalizing their printing and imaging fleet. But we are moving beyond this, means we want to really look at business processes and where the paper is in the flow of information that they need for their operations. And we are approaching this with specific advisory services, looking at where the pain is in the paper process and looking at optimizing those processes. So we really look at the business processes and we want to improve them. And to give you an example, there is one of these large manufacturing holding customers we work with. They approach us for optimizing their imaging and printing fleet, and by talking to the line of business, really looking at where the paper processes are a pain point for them. We look at the flow of the documentation and the information, and by talking about their business, the line of business, we realized that they really had needs and issues with some contracts. And we came up with solutions beyond just managing the printing and the services and offering services, but really to digitize all those contracts for them based on the implementation we were going to do. So it's really us looking at their environment beyond just printing and imaging, looking at where the needs are to optimize those processes and offering the right services around it.
I'll put this to both of you, but you spoke about these points of pain in the businesses. Is there a recurring point of pain that you see across many businesses that really flags these difficult parts to get the paper processes right?
Yes, there's certainly areas where there's consistent pain. We see it in a lot of businesses. They're not difficult to get right as such, they've just got to be identified. And the customer, the business, the manufacturer has got to identify those areas as being that's where the problem is. So for an example might be something as simple as invoice processing. So if the invoices are coming in from multi-channel, so you might have a small manufacturer who's bringing in just a paper invoice and posting it, somebody else who's emailing it, somebody else is using an EDI system. All of these multi-channel inputs need to be captured and put into the right place. If they get lost, then of course you're going to then get penalties for late invoice payment and so on. So it's these little areas of pain. I think the mistake some customers and some companies make is they say, right, we're going to digitize everything. And this sort of broad brush approach isn't the right one. You need to specifically look at where there are issues and how we can improve them.
What are the major mistakes you are seeing manufacturing businesses make when it comes to managing their printing services and paper systems?
Well, in addition to what Jan mentioned, I would say that the typical mistake is to be reluctant to move and to adopt digitization and don't touch my process because it's working. So most of the manufacturers would really not look or anticipate the benefit of a potential digitization or automating business processes. But they would really like to keep what's going and not measure the benefit. So they underestimate the benefit they could have from adopting new technologies and transforming their business.
I think it's worth adding that the companies where we see the changes to digital approach being more difficult is where they haven't talked to the workforce. You know, they need to bring the workforce along with them. The workforce know their processes really well. And there may be a management sort of feeling, impression that the workforce actually don't want to change. Well, actually, a lot of them do, and they understand some great ideas or have some great ideas where change might be really, really beneficial to the business. So changing a paper process into a digital one on a tablet device, for example. So I think it's key, and a mistake people often make is, you know, make sure you talk to your workforce and talk to them enough and get their ideas.
There's obviously a range of ways digitising paper processes and streamlining workflows in the back offices of manufacturers can help improve efficiency and reduce costs. But how can this apply to the shop floor?
Yeah, there are many ways this applies to the shop floor, and the adoption is great, as you say, in the office environment, in the back office. But in the shop floor, think about and paper is there, so think about where paper is, and it's driving all the production orders. It's driving all the production manifests that needs to be kept, for example, in the pharma industry or in the repair maintenance hall, where everything is documented and on paper. So paper is going to stay, it's not going to move away. But there are definitely many ways we can digitize those paper documents so that the processing goes electronically rather than on paper. And we really can speed up all the information extraction, because the hardware, the devices that are there to print, they also have intelligent capabilities to scan and process the information. So rather than waiting for the end of the day or waiting for, if you think about in a repair, a maintenance and repair overhaul for airlines or for large manufacturers, they need to wait for the end of the working day or the working period for collecting all this information on paper. If you could scan this in right on the shop floor with automated routing to back-end systems or to folder repository, then you speed up the extraction of this information and you make it available right away rather than waiting for it to be collected at the end of the sequence, the process, or what's happening. Since about incident on the shop floors, you need to fill in forms when an incident occurs. This form needs to be stored somewhere, so if you can scan it in and have it available immediately, then the reporting is done in a very quick way. So for any production process, things you need to archive, document and information, if they are extracted immediately from the shop floor, that doesn't require a lot of sophisticated engineering. It's just making an electronic workflow integrated into the paper-based existing workflow. Then you really speed up processing and operations, and you significantly reduce costs.
And let's talk about the physical kit that comes with implementing these processes. Space is crucial in manufacturing shop floors. So what are we looking at in terms of implementing these systems on the shop floor? What kind of kit are we looking at?
We're looking at integrating multifunction devices, because the printer is there, the device can print, it can scan, it can capture. I mean, this is not going to take 3 different devices. It's going to take the same devices that has already those capabilities enabled. So really, we're not multiplying the number of hardware devices or kit that are needed. We're just making sure that our customers or manufacturers make the best and full use of the capabilities that they have existing in their environment anyway.
And I think we need to seamlessly integrate those with mobile devices as well. You know, they're becoming much more prevalent in the working space. They might be handheld, they might be barcode scanners, they might be tablet devices, all of which can input directly from the screen, or they might be able to photograph a document, or an error on a piece of manufacturing process. You can take the picture and send it straight through to the design office to actually check this isn't right, what needs to be done about it. So all of those can be integrated without increasing the space or the requirements in the manufacturing office, and work very effectively.
Okay. Ian, I'd like to field this question to you, if I may. Are you seeing these kinds of processes being adapted more so with companies who are implementing lean strategies in their businesses?
Yes, yeah. I mean, they're the obvious early adopters when they're looking at their business as a whole, but that doesn't preclude people who have an HR onboarding issue, which is just as likely to be in a manufacturer as it is into a bank, into a retailer, or there might be an expenses system which can be digitized. So it doesn't have to be big systems where you go in and make a difference. You make a difference in the very small ways, gain confidence throughout the business that this process works and it's giving benefits, and then move to bigger things. But certainly with companies who are moving towards a lean approach, then yes, some of these processes and workflows are absolutely essential to the business and drive great value and remove a lot of cost. For example, if an invoice gets lost from a large aero manufacturer, that invoice might be worth $5 million. That's a huge workflow issue just because of that piece of paper has been lost somewhere in the process. If that process can be digitized and made into a workflow, and it's digitally signed off and then travels electronically with whatever the sale is, you've overcome that problem.
How do you link your services with existing back-end software and resources such as ERP systems?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I mean, what is key for a lot of companies is they've already made an investment in some sort of back-end system, whether it be a database, whether it be a mass production system or an ERP system like SAP. We aren't in the business of replacing those. What we're trying to do is capture information as early as possible in the process, digitize it, extract information from it, and then pass that into those systems, whatever they might be. So we'll have interfaces or APIs in our products which will link directly into an ERP system, so that the information coming into the customer, in whatever format it might be, in that multi-channel input, can be posted reliably into the ERP systems or back-end systems.
Marie-Amelie, I can see how the HP systems could benefit logistics across supply chains. Can you see receipt and proof of delivery systems going completely paperless to make supply chain procedures more efficient?
Well, proof of delivery, goods delivery notes, like invoice processing, like we mentioned earlier, these are the classic example, but this is never going to go paperless. And there will always be a mix of, and that's what we mentioned until now, we want to help digitize these documents to make the electronic flow a lot more efficient, cost effective. But the paper will remain just simply for compliancy or regulation reasons. There is no way we can remove the paper and have a complete paperless office, and it's going to depend from one country to the other. But some countries and regulations really require that the physical paper is kept and archived in a physical and accessible storage for so many years. Though what I would say, and the example of the proof of delivery document is a classic one, because we have so many customer examples that we can talk through, where I can give one example of a logistics shipping customers who's having all those delivery goods delivered to homes or to different locations. There is still paper going with a truck driver. The truck is not going to have a tablet, and that's not going to move to a tablet in all cases anyway, possibly, or even on a ship or overseas transportation. But back to the truck driver, is carrying those paper. By the time he's finishing his route and delivering all those goods or material that he has to deliver and gets the signed proof of receipt or proof of delivery notes back, it's the end of the day. And maybe the next day he's handing over those paper documents to be processed by a back office person. And they will still need to archive those documents. But what if somebody complains, or there is an incident, or some complaints, or I don't know, discrepancies occur? And if somebody's calling, or the customer's calling and say, well, I haven't received the number of goods that I signed for, or there is a defect with the goods, by the time you go back to the paper, that might not have been processed yet. I mean, you have this delay and you have this issue that you cannot reply to your customer in due time. So if by the end of the day, when the truck is coming back to the docking station, if all those papers could be scanned in automatically and fed back with extraction of the metadata and the information, all the goods received, the invoice order, the purchase order, all those metadata that you need to identify which customer, what route, and what goods were delivered. If this is available in the system, by the time the customer files a complaint or calls for inquiring about the goods delivered, then you know you have access to it electronically, and the paper is still there. The paper is still going to be archived and filed somewhere, and until you really have a huge claim where you need to present the physical paper, you might solve most of your issues by dealing with the electronic information. So that's valid for proof of receipt, proof of delivery or receipt of goods notes, but this is valid for any type of document in the manufacturing or supply chain or logistics supply chain. And we've had many examples also in the retail, in the consumer goods, where the fast-moving goods, it's just so fast-moving that you need to have this information much earlier in the process. And only by capturing this information in a digital way and sending it to the back-end system, only then can you really access this information. So the answer to paperless, no, it's not going to be the goal even. Eventually, yes, reduce the costs related to printing or dealing too much paper, but you will need both anyway. And the idea that the solutions we want to provide to our customers is to have the best of both worlds.
It's not getting rid of paper, it's just making the use of paper smarter.
Absolutely.
Marie-Amelie was talking earlier, Ian, about disruptions to manufacturing industries and a lot of people being a little bit wary of them. What is the setup and implementation cycle like when implementing HP services into facilities, into manufacturing facilities?
Okay, I mean, it's a really interesting point because confidence is absolutely key. When you're changing any process which has been in place for a long time, as Marie-Amelie said, if it isn't broken, why fix it? But sometimes to actually change it can make things a lot more efficient. So that changing process is absolutely key. So whoever's doing that work for you, an HP has to be expert in the change management process, as well as being expert in document workflows and digitisation and capture. So with that in mind, we would typically take a sort of proof of concept type approach. We'd take a small area where a process has been identified which can be improved. I mentioned earlier about an expense system or an HR onboarding. They're very distinct and sort of ring-fenced applications where they're not going to affect other areas of the business. So we can prove confidence that technology works, that the system works, the whole concept works, and that the employees can get used to this digital approach. Once we've done that, we then tend to expand that out, cover these areas of pain, and again, take a step-by-step approach. Big bang, it's a big change, and it's that confidence. Have you got confidence, one, in the employee and the workforce with going digital? Has the management got confidence in not having paper within the environment? Are there governance issues? And as Marie-Amelie very wisely says, there's never going to be the paperless office completely. There will always be paper which might have to travel with the consignment if it's going across border into countries which can't receive it digitally and so on. And they might have different archive requirements or different governance requirements. So it's a step-by-step approach. Again, it's listening to the workforce. Training is absolutely key to make sure they're aware of what's happening and why it's happening and what the benefits are and how it works, and picking off small areas where you're not going to disrupt the business, but you can make an actual benefit.
Have you seen any businesses that you've helped out putting these systems in place then recommend these services to other businesses that they might be working with as well?
Yes, I mean, it's logistics companies are key in this because they're moving bits of paper and items around all the time. And of course, they might be part of a manufacturing business or interface very closely with a manufacturing business, having to take the product to the ultimate end customer. So we see a lot of traction in those sort of areas where they're digitising that paperwork. They might be moving to trucks which have tablet devices where it can be signed off electronically rather than on paper, and aiding that cross-border process. All of that, of course, then feeds back into the invoice which is sent because you've got a confirmed delivery note, and that process then goes back into the back-end ER systems. If you lose the invoice, you've lost the revenue. And so it then becomes linked up, and these little bite-sized chunks get bitten off all the way around until you've got the complete process.
So I know a lot of other industries, such as the banking and finance sectors, have put these processes in quite early on. We're looking at about 50% of processes are now going paperless. How is manufacturing tracking compared to these other industries?
I think we find that, for example, the financial services industry are early adopters. And especially at the moment, they've got lots of governance as part of their process. So they're having to audit their processes, digitise their process. So they are adopting early. Manufacturers tend to be behind that process. They're more cautious. And they have processes which have been in place and work very well and aren't governed in the same way that perhaps some other industries are. But health and safety is becoming bigger, archiving is becoming more important. So we are seeing a lot of growth in that area. And what we're finding is that the earlier they digitise and capture information, the better in the whole process. So really the way to start is to get us in as a consultative approach, to start talking with the customer, to start highlighting those pain points so that we can actually follow the process and how the documents flow through the whole business, and then pick off some of these simple areas and start that digitisation process as early as possible. The benefits are out there. It's no longer vaporware. We're actually achieving benefits for companies.
So let's put it in there. How crucial is this to manufacturers, particularly moving forward into this new era of digital manufacturing?
Well, this is important. This is crucial. This is the evolution. The digital transformation is there, and technology is available. What I've realized talking with many customers is they tend to adopt this technology when events are taking place, like building a new factory, having a new site, implementing a new system. So it's good to look at those processes as part of this transformation. But for existing manufacturing entities, they will have no way but catch up with this transformation, because the way of we are dealing with the mobile devices and the digital world is catching up. So that's crucial to adopt these technologies and look at those, as we said, in a consultative approach, step by step, not re-engineering everything just from start, but looking at improving those processes.
And I think the call to action is now. You know, there's companies out there that are doing it. Be careful, your competition will be doing it. So you need to make sure they're not getting ahead of you on digitising their processes and getting that cost reduction and efficiencies that you should be getting. So really, it's right now to engage with a company like HP or our partner network to start that consultative process and start identifying where we can make a difference.
Marie-Amelie, Ian, thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure. Thank you.